Hello, ELA tutors. Happy October. I hope you're having a great time getting to know your students. In every newsletter this year, we're going to focus on a different ELA best practice. And what are ELA best practices? If you were at the fall kickoff, you saw this document, which is our ELA best practices document. And it is based on the body of second language acquisition research. So the body of academic research into how adults acquire language. And we simplified it down into this small set of best practices. So this is going to guide all of our continuing education events and opportunities for the year. So in this month, we're looking at student-centered instruction and specifically how we can use pair and group work to maximize student talk time and minimize teacher talk time. And throughout this video, I'm going to be referring to the Student-Centered Classroom by Leo Jones, which is linked below the video in the newsletter. So why do we care about a student-centered classroom? Because we don't want our students to feel like they can't communicate in English in the real world, like they are tongue-tied because they're worried about making mistakes, or like they can't survive outside of the classroom without someone there to help them and guide them. We want our students to feel confident with their English and to be independent users of English who can advocate for themselves and get what they want and need. So one way of thinking about our classrooms is to think about who is the focus of the classroom. We can talk about teacher-centered learning, which is how the majority of us learned a language in high school or college, where the teacher has the knowledge and the experience and they impart this knowledge to the students who memorize it and then parrot it back on tests or worksheets or in rote interactions in the classroom. Another way to think about it is a student-centered learning shift where everyone's knowledge, experience, and beliefs are equally valued. The teacher creates the learning situation, and then the students work together in that learning situation. They're collaborating, they're problem solving, they're making lots of mistakes, but that's okay because they're learning how to use this English in real communication. And so then if they have problems or questions, the teacher is there to support, but the teacher is not doing the imparting of knowledge, rather the students are doing the exploration of knowledge together. So what is the role of a teacher in a student-centered classroom? Well, in a teacher-centered classroom, the teacher is the sage on the stage. If you look at this illustration, the students are watching the teacher who is explaining. In a student-centered classroom, the teacher is the guide on the side. So you can see that the students are working together, collaborating and problem solving, and the teacher is moving around the classroom, supporting students as needed, but not the focus of the classroom activity. So let's talk about how to maximize your student talk time with pair and group work, regardless of your class size. First, we'll talk about very small classes. So how should your students work together in a very small class? Should we, as teachers, take part in the discussions as an equal partner? Well, in a small class, students tend to be very teacher dependent. They wait for praise or encouragement or correction from us. But we want the students to be working together without fear of making mistakes or without us chiming in, which is hard in a small class. So if we physically move ourselves away from the pairs and groups in a small class, we can help them be more independent. Sit away from where the students are sitting. You're still listening and encouraging, and if the students do need support, you're there, but you're mostly listening and giving them time to work independently. In very large classes, pair and group work is great because it gives all students time to practice at the same time. Whereas if you're going one by one by one by one in a large class, it gets super boring and disengaging. So pair and group work gives everybody time to practice at the same time. When the students are in their pairs and groups, You're circulating around the room, you're listening, you're supporting as needed, but you're intervening very rarely. And it can be important, depending on your classroom, to seat students very close together when you're doing pair and group work in a large class to reduce the amount of noise so that they're not having to talk as loudly to get their partner to hear them. And what about mixed ability level classes? I learned in the Fishbowl this summer that our classes are indeed very, very, very multi-level. But pair and group work is a great way to support those lower level students while challenging the higher level students. And so depending on the activity, you can either have a mixed proficiency group, meaning students of lower proficiency with students of higher proficiency, so that the higher students are supporting the lower students. Or you can do like proficiency groups where you've got the lower students with the lower students. And either way, you are walking around and taking notes and listening and seeing how it's going so that you can adapt for the next time. You don't have to get this right off the bat. This takes learning about your students, learning about who's there on that particular day, and reflecting and changing as you go forward. Some common challenges are that students might feel nervous or embarrassed or tongue-tied. They might speak English and make a lot of mistakes, or they might revert to their first language and not use the English that we want them to use, or they just may not enjoy working together. And we'll address all of these in later newsletters. But I would like to encourage you to take a risk and try some new parent group activities because the benefits outweigh the challenges. And the benefits include that when students work together, they talk more, they share their ideas, they learn from each other, they're more involved, they feel more secure and less anxious, and they use English in a meaningful and realistic way, which is what we want. So in the rest of the newsletter, you'll find resources with specific ideas for integrating pair and group work into your lessons. I've linked this document, this book, below here, and we'll continue to use this in other months of the newsletter. So thank you so much for everything that you do. I hope that you have a fantastic month. And as always, don't hesitate to reach out with questions and concerns.